Florida politicians just dropped 13 new bills to end property taxes in Florida. Sounds great, right? But none of them does what Governor DeSantis asked for and what every Florida voter actually deserves. In this video, I'll show you all 13 of these so-called property tax cuts in plain English, expose why Republican politicians are turning their backs on DeSantis, and reveal the real reason Florida politicians don't actually want to end property taxes. Let's jump in. Here's what Governor DeSantis is saying.
This is going to be on the ballot in November of 2026. So it's over a year away. We're working very hard with folks. You got to get the language right. You got to get the numbers. You got to get all that. I've said, Florida resident, you have a home, you're homesteaded, you should own it. You shouldn't be taxed. That shouldn't be an ATM for the local government. That's the vision that we want to see.
It makes sense, right? If the government can take your house just because you don't pay property taxes, then you never really own it. You're basically renting it from the government for life. And here in Florida, home values have gone through the roof the last 5 years, which means property taxes have too. So now you got retirees, young families, and people on fixed incomes either losing their homes or barely hanging on. DeSantis wants to fix that. He wants real relief by ending these insane property taxes, and you'd think every politician would be on board, right? I mean, this guy won his last election in a landslide, paid off half the state's debt, built a $15 billion surplus, and flipped Florida from a swing state to deep red. Back in 2018, Democrats had 400,000 more registered voters. Today, Republicans lead by around 1.4 million. That's massive. But instead of backing him up, Florida politicians went the other way. They introduced 13 new bills that sound like property tax reform, but every single one of them is set up to fail. And here's where it gets sneaky. They know most people are only going to read the headlines. So when you see 13 bills to end property taxes, you think, finally. But once you actually look inside these bills, you realize they don't end anything. They just move numbers around, rename a few things, and call it reform. It's the oldest political trick in the book. They count on you not to read the fine print. Now, here's how this little game really works. Only a member of the Florida House or Senate can introduce a property tax proposal. To change the Florida Constitution, it has to be filed as what's called a joint resolution. That resolution needs a 3/5 majority in both chambers, and then it goes on the ballot in November 2026. After that, it still needs 60% of voters to say yes, not 51%, 60. So the setup, they know it's almost impossible to get 60% of people to agree on anything, especially when they flood the ballot with 13 different versions. So I'm going to break down all 13 of these proposals and give you my no BS take on every one of them. And when we're done, I'll show you the secret trick hiding in all of them and how this whole thing is just one giant scam. Let's go. All right, let's start with the House. They're the ones who dropped the first 8 bills, and here's the crazy part. Every single one of them looks like tax relief, but hides the same problem. Watch this. First up, we got HJR 201, which means House Joint Resolution 201. This one eliminates all non-school property taxes on your primary home starting January 1st, 2027, if voters approve it. Sounds awesome, right? Finally, some relief. But here's the catch. You'd still pay the school portion of property taxes, and that's the part that keeps going up. I've been paying school property taxes for 27 years. I don't have kids, and under this bill, I'd be paying for schools for the rest of my life. Fair? I don't think so. Then comes HJR 203. This one phases out non-school property taxes on homesteads over 10 years by adding a $100,000 exemption every year until 2037. Yeah, 2037. So you're waiting a whole decade before you feel anything. And again, school taxes, still there. Now HJR 205, this one sounds good at first. It gives people 65 and older a break from all non-school property taxes starting in 2027. Great for retirees, sure, but there are 5 million Floridians over 65 and 18 million under 65. So for most people, no help at all. You starting to see a pattern yet? Every one of these bills leaves school taxes untouched. That's the hill they won't give up. HJR 207 replaces the $50,000 homestead exemption with 25% off your home's value. But again, only for the non-school part. So if your home's worth $400,000, you save $100,000 from being taxed. But if your home's only worth $200,000, it barely changes a thing. It helps the people with pricier homes, not the ones getting crushed by rising taxes. Then we got HJR 209. This one gives you an extra $100,000 tax break if you keep your home insured. But let's be real, if people are already struggling to pay property taxes, they can't afford insurance either. This one helps the people who need it least. Next, HJR 211. This one removes a 50% cap on portability. That's how much of your property tax savings you can take when you move. Normally, you can only move half. This bill lets you move all of it. So if your old home was worth $1 million and you saved $200,000, you can move that full $200,000 to your new home. Sounds nice until you realize it doesn't lower anybody's taxes. It just helps people who are moving from one home to the next, usually expensive ones. If you're already struggling to keep your house, this does nothing for you. Then comes HJR 213. This one slows how fast your home value can rise for tax purposes. Instead of 3% per year, it's 3% total over 3 years for homesteads and 15% for other properties. But again, none of it touches school taxes. You still end up paying more, just slower. Another looks good on paper idea that does nothing to stop the bleeding. Finally, HB 215. That's House Bill 215. And this one says local governments need a 2/3 vote instead of a simple majority to raise tax rates. It also lets newly married couples combine their Save Our Homes benefits when they buy a house. Sounds like a win, right? Nope. First, you got to be married to even get the biggest savings, which leaves a lot of people out. And second, local governments love raising millage rates. They'll have no problem hitting that 2/3 vote. This doesn't stop anything. So yeah, these are 8 failed bills. Not one of them ends property taxes, not even close. But here's what I found interesting. Florida Republicans didn't file all 8 of these by accident. There's a reason they did it. And when you see what that reason is, it's gonna piss you off. All right, now let's see if the Florida Senate did any better. Because after those 8 disastrous in the House, you'd hope somebody's got their act together, right? They don't, and you're about to see why. First up, SJR 270 or Senate Resolution 270. This one says if you're 65 or older, you've lived in your Florida home at least 5 years, and you and your spouse make under $350,000 a year, you could stop paying most of your property taxes, except the part that goes to schools. Sounds great, right? But think about it. I'd have to wait another 15 years just to maybe qualify for this. And even then, I'd still be paying the school portion, which is one of the biggest parts of the bill anyway. So no, this doesn't end property taxes, and worse, it punishes people who work hard or built successful businesses. If you make over $350K, you're out. Next, SJR 274. This one's like a loyalty card for homeowners. Stay in your home for 20 years, and the county can't raise your home's tax value anymore. Stick around for 30 years, and they'll knock 50% off your home's taxable value. Sounds like a deal, right? But here's the problem. The median age of a first-time homebuyer is 38. That means you'd be 58 before the first tax break and 68 before you get the full one. People need help now, not when they're about to retire. And most people move every 13 years anyway, so guess what? You'll never see a dime of that relief. Then comes SJR 278. This one's about what happens when someone buys a new home. Normally when you buy, property taxes uncap and the county reassesses the value, which often means a massive jump in your tax bill. This bill tries to limit that. If the home's worth under $500,000, they can't raise the taxable value by more than 150% of last year's value. Sounds nice, but only if you're buying a cheaper home. Anything above $500,000 doesn't count. And with the median home price in Florida sitting around $404,000, that leaves out a big chunk of buyers. Plus, it still doesn't lower your taxes. It just stops them from skyrocketing too fast. All right, now SJR 282. This one's aimed at small businesses. It limits how much the county can raise their property values each year, either 3% or whatever the Consumer Price Index says, whichever's smaller. Cool for businesses, sure, but what about regular homeowners? Nothing. It doesn't touch your taxes, your assessment, or your skyrocketing bill. So if you're just trying to keep your house, this bill's completely useless. And finally, SB 286. This one's not even a constitutional amendment, which means you don't get to vote on it. Only the politicians do. It says if you add something to your home, like a new room above your garage, kitchen, or pool, as long as the total value is under $100,000, the county can't raise your property value for tax purposes. And honestly, that's great, but it's not property tax reform. It's just a tiny fix for a much bigger problem. And by the way, why are homeowners being punished at all for fixing up their own property? You're improving the neighborhood, adding value, and you get hit with a higher tax bill for it. It's insane. I actually did a full video about this. It's called Never Renovate Your Florida Home. You won't believe what happened to one couple that upgraded their house and got blindsided. I'll drop the link in the description below. So here's the truth. None of these Senate bills eliminate property taxes either. Not one. They just add more rules, more exceptions, and more confusion. The people are fed up, the politicians know it, so they're trying to look like they're doing something. They toss us a few scraps, give us a little relief, and hope that's enough to calm everybody down. But this story's not over yet, because when you see why they filed 13 separate bills instead of one clean fix, it's going to make a lot of sense, and it's not good. And what comes next explains everything. Remember when I said it takes 60% of voters to pass a joint resolution to change the Florida Constitution? 60%. That's a supermajority, and the more options you give people, the harder it gets to hit that number. Let me show you how it works. Picture 100 people in a room, and I ask, who likes vanilla ice cream? It's easy, right? Just about everybody raises their hands, and boom, vanilla wins. Now I throw in 5 more flavors: chocolate, strawberry, cookie dough, mint chocolate chip, Rocky Road. Suddenly, people are split. Some vote chocolate, others vote strawberry. A few go for cookie dough. Now, no single flavor hits 60% and nobody wins. That's exactly what Florida politicians are doing with these 13 bills. They're splitting the vote on purpose. They want it to look like they're helping you, when really they're protecting the system that keeps the money flowing. Because here's the truth, they don't want property taxes gone. That's their piggy bank. Property taxes fund bloated budgets, pet projects, and nonprofits nobody's watching. It lets politicians look like they're doing something positive for the community, when really, they're not fixing anything. They're just managing the illusion. And when it fails, which they know it will, they're going to go on TV and say, hey, we tried, the voters just didn't support it. It's a setup, it's slick, and it's designed to make you think you're the reason change didn't happen. Because they're going to blame you. See, it's easy for politicians to say, let me explain why we have to keep doing things the same way, but it takes guts to say, let's tear this down and rebuild it the right way. That's what Governor DeSantis is trying to do. So don't fall for the explainers, vote for the trailblazers. And here's the real reason Florida politicians don't want this to pass. It could cost them their next election. If they kill property taxes, they'll piss off the mayors, commissioners, and school boards who live off that money and back them at election time. Those local officials are the ones who endorse them, rally votes, and keep them in power. So instead of one real fix, they dropped 13 fake ones to make it look like they're working. They're splitting the vote on purpose so nothing changes. And when it fails, they'll blame you. So here's what you do. Call your state rep and tell them you want one simple question on the ballot in 2026, not 13 distractions. This is what you want it to say. Do you want to eliminate homestead property taxes? Yes or no? That's it. I'll drop a link in the description so you can find your state rep. This isn't about politics, it's about ownership and breaking free from a system that taxes you to death. Because if the government can take your house over a tax bill, you never really own it. They've had decades to fix this. They won't. So now it's up to us to back Governor DeSantis' plan to end property taxes for good. We're not the only ones sick of this. People all over Florida are waking up and finally pushing back. And if we keep the pressure on, we're going to win. But first, you need to see what they've already done with your money. Click here to learn how these Florida politicians blew $1.2 billion in property taxes. They got caught red-handed, and they'll do anything to keep the gravy train rolling. Click here, and I'll see you there.